Hey, good afternoon, true believers. This is your boy, Kyle, aka Vulcan Wolverine, aka the Remote Neural Man. Um, I'm really sick from the targeting. It like lately my attackers have been really amping it up. So I'm gonna keep this video short, guys. I'm not quite sure why my targeting has just amped up so much. My feelings are on it that the way that this system, keeps targeted individuals from speaking out is that it kind of creates a feeling in these targeting groups, like the people that are targeting us, the electronics corps that are targeting us, these shift workers or hive team members, where if a target is like, well, if like one of us is speaking out and getting good information out, they feel like they're not in control of their target. They're not handling their target well enough. And then this creates a feeling in them like they're going to look bad in front of their peers. They're going to look like they're not, doing their job or whatever. And I feel like that's a evil check and balance of this evil system of targeting. So I think that my attackers are having this feeling because I'm like, trying to get information out. I'm running with my secondary channel, even though I got like my live stream got swatted away from me, and I'm still progressing. They're like, we gotta kind of lay on the heat. They like usually they'll send pulse pain down my back, my lower back, which I've told y'all about. And last night, they did the same thing, but like on the left side of my shoulder and my head. So it's like almost like somebody heated up a knife with one of those, like with fire, and then they're just like stabbing all over the left side here. So I'm having a lot of trouble. I'm really sick, but I've got some just bombshell information about the DSM, and it's something that I've thought about for a long time. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? The DSM come first, and then this targeting program was kind of took the DSM into account, or was it the other way around? Was the DSM written with these programs in mind? And I think that I've found the answer, which it's mind-boggling how I didn't look up this information before. The date that the first DSM was written versus these programs where the CIA was already remotely experimenting on citizens with remote microwaves, and following and gang stalking them, and trying to make them feel crazy and doing this experimentation. But first, before I get to that, guys, I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you're fighting. Strength is resistance. Resistance is strength. That just kind of popped into my head today. I bought some like 20-pound dumbbells, and I'm gonna try and strengthen the muscles all on my shoulder and my neck and stuff, because obviously that's a pretty obvious scientific thing. If you strengthen the body, that anything that's being induced to it, artificial signals, any kind of sickness that's being induced to the body can be lessened, because you're strengthening the muscles around the nerves and the tissue around the nerves and everything, and making your body healthier. So I was just thinking, I think that's from somewhere else. Strength is resistance, resistance is strength. It's kind of weird because like I thought of that. I actually went to Target to get the dumbbells, and I bought this shirt. I bought this shirt and a Flash shirt. I love this shit. It kind of reminds me of like what Tony Stark wears in the Iron Mans and the Infinity War, and it has these lines in it that give me the illusion that I have muscles. It's a little bit too tight though, but I think I'm gonna lose weight or something to fit into it. I don't want to get too much off track because I just want to make this a short one, guys. But I do want to show Judge Napolitano talking about the Julian Assange arrest on Fox News. I think that Julian Assange is a hero. I think that these agencies that are saying all these secrets are national security, and it's treason to release any information that the American people deserve to know. When Americans are being tortured and experimented on, and there's tyranny like that, And these agencies and the Department of Defense and the military industrial complex, they should lose that privilege of just saying, oh, well, we've got to do what's right for the country, we've got to do what's right for war, we need to keep all these secrets. When they start just picking innocent people and torturing them and hurting families, innocent families, and there's no checks and balances within that system to assure that even though they're maintaining secrets, that it's moral, that what they're doing is moral and upholds to a code which they promised to uphold to, they should lose that right. And what he did, what Julian Assange and Edward Snowden did, they are heroes. Now, I saw a bunch of congressmen coming out and saying, he's treasonous and he shouldn't have let that out. None of those secrets should have been let out because it's treasonous. However, even if someone feels that way, and Judge Napolitano is gonna go through this, even if somebody feels that way, that these secrets, were State Department secrets. Julian Assange was basically just a journalist. He had sources. Now, the sources may have been breaking the law, that may be technically right, that the sources that gave him the information were breaking the law. But he, as a journalist, should not actually have responsibility for that. Judge Napolitano will explain it more, but I just want to say it loud and proud. This is the way we're going to win. Men like Julian Assange, men like Edward Snowden, they aren't just freedom fighters. They are heroes and they are soldiers. And the American people and citizens around the world deserve to have this information, because it's not just State Department secrets. In those departments and agencies are withholding or maintaining honor and just going after the bad guys. Now, if that were true, I think that this would be a little bit different. But there's corruption and there's tyranny and there's families being murdered and tortured and experimented on and other awful things. Not just the targeting program. I think they lose that privilege, and we have the right to know, because it is a war against the American people. And I believe that this. I want to say it loud and proud. Loud and proud. We should defend this man. A lot of the information about the directed energy weapons market came from WikiLeaks and would not have been out in the public otherwise. So he's made great strides and helped us as a targeted individual community. So let me go ahead and play this. I want to keep this short. I'm really sick, and I don't know. I'll kind of want to do a live stream this weekend. And I have tons of information that I want to get to still. But Neil says that if any of you guys go to Neil's calls on Sunday, he says you got to kind of balance it, because I hate saying this, because I definitely don't want to discourage anybody from putting out information, from doing activism, for stepping out and being. We have to do that. We have to do that, and it's better than not doing that. But our attackers do. They do amp it up. When you really push and you're really working in a positive direction, they try and slap you back down. So my attackers are doing that. And what Neil says is you've got to balance it out. You've got to balance out your activism with how much pain you can take from the torture. Because our torture groups, the groups that are torturing us, however you think about it, I kind of think about it like that's how information is. What's the word for it? Information is covered up, and they fight against targeted individuals coming out and speaking, because these individual groups, these contractors that are torturing individuals, they say, I have to handle my target, and if my target's doing really good and getting all this information out and helping people, then I'm not handling my target. We look like our group looks like it's weak and not handling the target or something like that, and therefore up the pyramidal structure it does suppress information from individuals who are being hurt. I hate it's better to come out and speak, even if your torture gets a little bit worse. Getting out in front of it is a lot safer, but it does suck in a lot of ways, and I'm sure a lot of you guys who are targeted individuals that come out and speak out, you know this. Probably a lot of other stuff I want to talk about too, but that's why I'm going to kind of keep this short and just go through this. I'm going to play this first part of it. I love Judge Napolitano. He's a hero to me. he is a hero to me because he's gotten into a lot of trouble for his views on things. He wants power to the American people. He wants power to citizens of the world. And those views where you want citizens to have full knowledge of what's going on in their surroundings, in their world, those views are not popular. It's not mainstream. You know, we have to just trust the CIA. We have to just trust these agencies. They're going to do what's right, and you can't ever release any of that information. You know, that's the mainstream. Like, everybody is scared and they want to be. That's kind of what the group think is like. You know, and we're seeing right now. I'll kind of talk about it after this, but we're seeing right now that they're going to try and make an example out of Julian Assange. They're going to try and make an example out of Alex Jones to scare others who want to come out with information that can help people, but maybe sensitive information or whatever. The time where these agencies should be able to keep this kind of secrecy with what they're doing is over. And whatever the consequences, people throughout the world need to know what's happening to keep them safe from these agencies. Not just America's agencies, the CIA and the DoD and the military-industrial complex of America, but every country in the world and their military-industrial complexes. People have the right to be protected from their tyranny. So things have changed from the days where it's like, well, they need to keep their secrets and stuff like that, and it's treasonous to let things out. No, it's treasonous what these agencies are doing when they're torturing and murdering Americans. And so Julian Assange comes in, like, he knew that, he got information. Let me play this, because I've got some other just crucial information that I can't believe that I had not found out before. But I wanted to touch on the Julian Assange arrest, because I know probably a lot of you know about it. It happened in the last 2 days.
About an hour and 10 minutes ago, taken into custody at the Ecuadorian embassy where he's been living in refuge since 2012.
Police served Assange with a warrant dating back to 2012, but it's still unknown exactly what it's for.
All right, Judge, you got to help us with this. It just broke 30 minutes ago. You're the guy who hosts Liberty File. I recognize you from the app. Judge Andrew Napolitano.
Right, and I have
So he was
interviewed
dragged out. We can't use the picture yet, but he was dragged out in cuffs.
He was dragged out because knowing him, and of course we all know him, I've interviewed him many times. He's of the belief that if he voluntarily went out or cooperated with them, he might be waiving his claim to an unlawful arrest. So they literally carried him out. He is technically arrested on a bail jumping violation. It's a very, very...
Because they got rid of the sexual assault in Sweden.
Correct.
But they didn't drop the case. They just rescinded the charges.
So there's no basis to arrest him in London for the sexual assault investigation in Sweden. He apparently has been charged with something in the United States we don't know because of this inadvertent release.
Okay, so you heard what he just said. There's another charge that is not being released. There's like a warrant that's being rescinded. So there's some other charges in the United States. But basically Ecuador is allowing the UK to take custody of Julian Assange. There was well, he'll talk about it, but there's a promise that the UK will not hand off Assange to a third party, but it's not enforceable, which I don't know how all that works. Basically, what that means is the United States can actually extradite him to the United States. And let him finish up on what he's talking about. But the United States will try and make an example out of Julian Assange, and they already have been, because as targeted individuals, we know that there's more to what the news is reporting. There's more to the whole situation of what's been happening to Julian Assange, even in that embassy. And after he leaked that information, we know, and we can say this with 100% accuracy, he's being remote neural monitored. He's being targeted. His lawyer talks about it, how he basically lives in like a Truman Show type environment. How do targeted individuals say they feel a lot with heavy surveillance and manipulation of their lives. And they're definitely doing that. You know, they would have already done, hooked into Julian Assange with remote neural monitoring and stuff like that to find out who gave him this information and to deal with those people. But then probably, I don't want to say, because I don't know, but if the United States gets a hold of him, they could torture him more than directed energy weapon remote torture, to get the names of the people who gave him this information. And we've got to add remote neural monitoring and remote torture to all these situations that we got this surface level information. But we know that these intelligence agencies have way more tools than they're saying, and that's the importance of a man like Julian Assange. It all kind of feeds into each other. It all kinds of feeds into itself. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but let Judge Napolitano kind of finish up here.
Of a warrant for him, and that is probably the true reason for his arrest. He will probably be extradited here. We will see the indictment, and we'll probably have a show trial.
Judge, why wouldn't he just give himself up initially and go to trial? Because he hasn't seen his family or his kids for all these years, knowing it's just delay and delay.
I have to tell you, in my opinion, Julian Assange is a hero. What he published was truthful information that the American public and the world had the right to see. He's a publisher, just like we are.
Judge, he just exposed State Department secrets the world had no business seeing. When you have private communiques with our officials, they should not be exposed, or else we'll never have private communiques.
I agree with you that will diminish the private communications. But just as if we, working for Fox News, received secret information, God, the public has to know this. The person who gave it to us commits the crime. The publisher does not commit the crime.
If he's guilty, will they use him as an example?
I would think so. If he's guilty, I don't think he'll see the light of day again.
So if he's brought to the United States, he's going to say, I can't answer questions about where I got this stuff because I'm protected by your First Amendment.
Correct. So I'm not going to tell you how I got Hillary Clinton's emails, but I got them and we published them.
Right. Ecuador, by the way, said the Ecuador president said, we'll only put you into British custody if you promise not to release him to a third party. It might be just his word that he got from Britain. We'll see what happens.
I don't think that promise is enforceable, bro.
Okay. All right. 13 minutes before the bottom of the hour. Let's change.
So Ecuador said we'll hand Assange over. They told the UK that they would hand Assange over if they would keep him and not hand him off to a third party. But the UK can hand him off to America or whatever. I mean, they have all these different little rules that they can kind of work to extradite Assange to the United States. And you know what the United States feels about Assange. Like, the people in power hate him. They hate him and see him as a traitor and treasonous because he's letting out all these secrets that it can empower the American public and keep them safe. But then you have Congress, who's either really stupid. There's some congressmen and women who are just really stupid. They all, want to see the full power of the law on top of Julian Assange because it's like kind of the group thing to do. It's the mainstream thing to say, which, as a targeted individual, it should be cut and dry that this man is a hero. If everything was hunky-dory and the agencies were getting the bad guys and they really needed their secrecy because it was going to get soldiers killed who were only doing good, it would be different. But it's not. It's more complicated than that, and we know that. So I just want to say, loud and proud, Julian Assange is a huge hero. I also wanted to kind of just talk about quickly, and then I'll move on to the bombshell information, what Edward Snowden said about the Julian Assange
About an hour
arrest.
ago, about 10:30 local time, we're hearing from WikiLeaks people themselves.
No, I don't even know if I can play these newscasts. Like, that's how crappy copyright rules are on YouTube. This video could be taken down because I'm showing these newscasts. I mean, how do you even get across information when you can't show the main news story? And, I just think copyright rules are now censorship. It's now a conditioning of censorship within our society. Let me see if I can get... I don't want to play too much of it because I have other information that I really want to get out. This is also very, very important. It's very, very important to every truth teller and everybody who's going up against tyranny in the world. Yeah, I think this is it, maybe.
To dehumanize, delegitimize, and imprison him, claiming that Ecuador has illegally terminated Assange's political asylum in violation of international laws. We've also heard from online U.S. whistleblower Edward Snowden this morning. He's offering comment on these developments, tweeting out saying that images of Ecuador's ambassador inviting the UK secret police into the embassy to drag a publisher of, like it or not, award-winning journalism out of the building are going to end up in the history books. Assange's critics may cheer, but this is a dark moment for press freedom. Now, the UK government says Assange
okay,
will
guys,
first
so I
face...
just kind of wanted to, it's a huge story, so anybody who didn't know, I wanted to let them know about this, and you know, I'll probably be talking about it, you know, when we learn more, but you know that in the equation of this, remote neural monitoring, these neuro weapons are involved. You know, when Julian Assange was dragged out of the embassy, his hair was really long, he had a beard, it looked like something had been happening to him, and we know that they can torture people and interrogate them with remote neural monitoring in microwaves and things, in remote microwaves and things like that. And we know that they would probably do that to Julian Assange, and he's talked about it. He's between the lines. If you listen to him and you kind of really listen closely, he doesn't say it outright, but you can kind of get the gist that there's a lot of surveillance. There's surveillance and like gang stalking stuff going on, and probably directed energy weapon attacks to him. And I think that's obvious that they're going to do something like that to Julian Assange. Okay, so quickly, guys. Quickly, I wanted to go through something that I'd often thought of. Especially when I'm going to my psychiatrist, and I'm like, I ask the question, I'm like, how does the DSM so closely, how does it get what is happening to us so right on the money and parallel it with mental illness, right? Like they say, if you think that you're being hit with some kind of weaponry from the government, you're mentally ill. If you think that you're being followed by the government, you're mentally ill. If anything like that, if you think that you've been implanted by the government, then you're mentally ill. And I said, well, maybe it's that the DSM came out and kind of said those things, kind of made up that terminology, and that meant that those criteria for being mentally ill, and then this program said, okay, well, let's make this program by looking at the DSM. And then so when we do this to somebody, a psychiatrist will go by the DSM and report them as mentally ill. However, the information that I found, bombshell information, that is not the case. This program and this experimentation came first. The DSM was written with this torture and this surveillance and this experimentation in mind. Now, it hadn't been as mass produced as it is right now, and not as many targets have been pulled in, but I want to go ahead and show you this. Look, why was the DSM originally created? The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, and for people who don't know, the DSM is basically a guideline that psychiatrists go by to classify people with certain mental illness, to put that mental illness on them. It's a classification system. So this is huge. I mean, this is huge, and I don't know how I did not find this before. Some of you guys may already know this, but I don't know how I didn't find this out. So look, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM, was created in 1952. Remember that year, 1952. Just remember that year, 1952. By the American Psychiatric Association, so that mental health professionals in the United States would have a common language to use when diagnosing individuals with mental disorders. So the DSM-1 was finished and released in 1952. So remember that. Now, let us go to Project Moonstruck, 1952, by the CIA. Electronic implants in brain and teeth, targeting long range implanted during surgery or surreptitiously during abduction. Frequency range, high frequency to extremely low frequency transceiver implants. Purpose, tracking, mind and behavioral control and conditioning, programming, covert operations, functional basis, electronic stimulation of the brain. 1952. Actually, I think it was like, they were planning on doing this probably, earlier than 1952, but then it was like kind of the program was written down that it was happening in 1952 and was classified. This information has since then come out. But so probably they were coming up with these protocols of torture and experimentation way before 1952. The DSM was released in 1952, around the same time that it was like, okay, we're going to go ahead and torture Americans and experiment on Americans with implantation and then long-range electromagnetic frequencies. This is huge, guys. I mean, this is huge. This is why the DSM, you look at it and it's like, you think that you're being followed by government agents. You believe you're being hit with some kind of weapon. You believe that you may be implanted. You may have V2K in your skull from some kind of agency. It was written, the DSM was written because these programs had already been planned. And I'm going to show you even more. I'm just scratching the surface on this, guys. But this is important because, when I'm like, I've always wondered. I don't know why I didn't connect these dots before or look for these dots before. But I said, how is it so close? This program must have been written with the DSM in mind. The people who figured out these torture protocols and were working with the weapons must have been thinking of the DSM. It was the other way around. It was the chicken before the egg, not the egg before the chicken. Or the egg before the chicken, not the chicken before the egg. It was something before something. No, okay, it was the program, the protocols for torture and experimentation were first, and then the people who wrote the DSM, the APA, which I'll be going through a little bit of information. Remember, I'm just kind of scratching the surface on this, but they were involved with each other. These agencies that were carrying this out in the military-industrial complex informed the writers of the DSM and were working with them. Conspiracy is how everything works. So, I mean, we got to get past this whole conspiracy theory. Those don't exist and those are only crazy. I mean, conspiracy facts are how people work in society. Evil conspiracies and good conspiracies. So check it out. Project MK Ultra in 1953. The CIA drugs, electronics, and electroshock, targeting short-range frequencies VHF, HF, UHF. So MK Ultra came shortly after in 1953. But there's no coincidence that the DSM was written in 1952, right around when all these torture programs and experimentation with long-range microwaves came out. There's no coincidence there. And these programs came first. Definitely. So I want to go to the history of the APA, the history of the American Psychiatric Association, who invented the American Psychiatric Association, because the American Psychiatric Association wrote the DSM. They wrote the DSM-1 in 1952. Now, what we need to do, and I haven't done this for this video, because this is just kind of a fingernail scratch of the surface of this issue, but we need to go back and find diagnostic criteria before 1952, before the DSM was written, and see if there are any traces of anything like you think that you've been implanted by the government or anything like that. Because if there was nothing like that before 1952 in any of the, in any of the protocols for diagnosing somebody with a mental illness, then that's more concrete data. That's more concrete evidence that the DSM was actually written with these programs in mind. That's huge. I mean, that's huge, and it's like why we scratch our heads and we're like, how does the DSM, like, some of this stuff is like word for word, and it's just like when we say it, because it's really happening to us, like implantation, being hit with long-range microwaves. being gang stalked by people who work for DHS fusion centers and stuff. That's right out of the DSM. But the DSM was written with these programs in mind. Of course, it wasn't as widespread in 1952. It was a smaller percentage of the population that they were doing this to, but they had prepared. These agencies that did it, the CIA, had prepared and had a lot to do with the actual writing of the DSM. Now, G. Stanley Hall was the founder of the American Psychological Association. I'm sorry, I said American Psychiatric Association. So let's check out G. Stanley Hall here. Let's see what his social views were. Now, it said he was raised on a farm in like Massachusetts and stuff like that, so nothing very outstanding that is written about his family or kind of how elite they were or whatever. But let's just look at his social views. Hall was deeply wedded to the German concept of Volk, an anti-individualist and authoritarian romanticism in which the individual is dissolved into a transcendental collective. Hall believed that humans are by nature non-reasoning and instinct-driven, requiring a charismatic leader to manipulate their herd instincts for the well-being of society. I mean, this is the person who created the American Psychological Association that then created the DSM. They had kind of a eugenics groupthink beliefs, and these organizations they all work together. The agencies that have these eugenics kind of beliefs and think of human beings as cattle that need to be controlled, kind of we all need to have a collective mindset or whatever. He predicted that the American emphasis on individual human right and dignity, listen to this. He predicted that the American emphasis on individual human right and dignity would lead to a fall that he analogized to the sinking of Atlantis. He thought that individual human right and dignity would create like a fall, like Atlantis fell into the sea and was destroyed. Hall was one of the founders of the child study movement in the 1880s. A national network of study groups called Hall Clubs existed to spread his teaching. He is popularly known today for supervising the 1896 study of peculiar and exceptional children, which described a series of only child eccentrics as permanent misfits. For decades, academics and advice columnists alike disseminated his conclusion that an only child could not be expected to go through life with the same capacity for adjustment that siblings possessed. Being an only child is a disease itself, he claimed. Okay, so, see if there's anything else that's useful in that. Hall had no sympathy for the poor, the sick, or those with developmental differences or disabilities. A firm believer in selective breeding and forced sterilization. He believed that any respect or charity toward those he viewed as physically, emotionally, or intellectually weak or defective simply interfered with the movement of natural selection toward the development of a super race. So you see the leaders of these associations that do big. The DSM determines everything. For psychiatrists and psychologists, they go from the DSM, and we see that the founder had these sick beliefs. Sick beliefs that thought individual freedom was dangerous, and would gladly go along with human experimentation for a greater good. And I don't know if he was alive when the DSM was written, but obviously he's going to have somebody to follow up. He's going to give power over to somebody else in the organization who thinks like him, is in his family or thinks the same way. So that's huge, guys, and we've got to look into this more, and maybe y'all can find more concrete data on this, but here it is. My attackers, like when I found this, I was like, oh my god, this is huge, because I'd always been like, wow, the DSM describes so closely how did they do that? Was the program written with the DSM in mind? But it was actually the other way around. this experimentation was planned, and then the people who wrote it in the American Psychological Association knew that this experimentation was going on. Long-range microwaves, governmental agencies following people, surveilling them, and things like that. And it's only become worse. But since they did that, since they created the DSM to be able to create psychiatric reprisal for anybody who was experiencing the tyranny and corruption from these agencies doing the experimentation, they quickly said, okay, here's a solution to that, so nobody will listen to them. I mean, this stuff, evil really has some good organization skills, and I'm not like, I'm not what's the word for it? I'm not like in awe of evil. I'm just saying it has some good. They thought about this stuff, because evil is always manipulating and thinking how to get at people. So it really thinks about ahead. Good has to do that too. I feel like we're waking up the sleeping dragon of good. Like the dragon's eye is open and its head is raised. It just needs to start flapping its wing and flapping its wings and blowing some fire. But basically that's it, guys. I think that's really important information. I don't know how I did not stumble onto this before or know this. Maybe some of you guys had already found this information. But the DSM was written after these programs had been decided on. And it was these things in the DSM that were written to discredit people who were being experimented on was done with these programs already being set in motion. With Project Moonstruck and MK Ultra, all these things were already planned. They were just being put into action around the same time as DSM-1 was released. The next step, I think, for me with this, and I'm going to be going over tons of other information too. I want to put this information out so that you guys can be like, I want to go look into that. I think it would be to look at the criteria before the DSM was written to see if there was any trace at all of, oh, you're being stalked by government agents, or you're being hit, or you're implanted, or you're being hit with some kind of energy, some kind of microwaves or something like that. I think that would be additional concrete proof that something was amiss here, that the DSM was written with programs that were already rolling out in mind. Alright guys, I think that's it for today though. I just kind of wanted to scratch the surface of that, and I also did want to talk about the Julian Assange information because he's a hero to me. A lot of the information about what's happening to us came out because he released this information as a journalist. And I do think that, obviously, I mean, if the United States has the power to remote neural monitor somebody from afar, they're going to do, they obviously want that information of who gave this, any kind of leaks and stuff that would give this to Julian Assange. They've already done that. Now what they can do with that, they might have to get him to actually say it and maybe torture him in a more direct way. I hope not. I hope that the UK keeps him and the United States does not extradite him, because the leadership of the United States hates him, like the military-industrial complex, and then I guess as a if the military-industrial complex in the deep state hates somebody, then you'll have a lot of Congress kind of just going along with it, just going along with it to kind of stay safe and to stay in the group. I think he was a hero. He is a hero. He is a hero, and Edward Snowden is a hero, and that's the way that awesome men fight this war. I mean, because people are being genocided. People are being genocided and experimenting on. And if there were no Julian Assanges, if there were no Edward Snowdens, boy, we wouldn't be as far as along, and the people wouldn't have as much empowering knowledge as they do now. It's still bad, even with those heroes coming out and doing this. But without them, we would be in an even worse situation. And I can't believe that Congress does not see that, and I can't believe that Judge Napolitano, there are men like that. Now I want to just say, Julian Assange is a hero, but there are still men like Judge Napolitano, and he says the truth, and he speaks for the people, and he doesn't care about the consequences, because we don't want to live in a world, where there's a lot of tyranny, where things are so draconian that it's not even, our lives are worthless. Without freedom, life is worthless. All right, guys. So that's kind of it for today. I don't know. I might be doing. Check out. I did a live stream yesterday on my secondary channel, Remote Neural Man. Put it in the playlist on the Vulcan Wolverine channel. What's it called? It's called like live stream for April 11th, 2019. And then I talked a lot about Dr. Ronnie Kilda, the gang stalking manual that she put out, that she got from sources in Finland. So I went through that. I don't know what else I went over. Oh, I went over transcranial electromagnetic stimulation, which I'm gonna get a device, and I think that could really help us as a defense. But really, if you want to check out, that information, just go check out that live stream. I think it's been 3 weeks or a month since my live stream was taken down. I'm not sure. I don't really. I'm not keeping track of it. Probably I'll check in a couple of weeks to see if it's released, and then I'll kind of move back to my main channel. But please check that out. And I'll be doing, that's where I'm doing live streams for now, guys. But I did want to put this information out on my main channel because I'm getting more eyes on videos over here. But I still love the live streams, and I love the people who come to the live streams, and it just helps me a lot to have them kind of, so it's a little bit more. It's not as I don't know. I don't want to say boring. I guess this information really can't be boring. I mean, it's about life or death. It's about our survival. Just talking about it so long though. Got to find better ways. We got to evolve. Got to get it out in more creative ways. I guess. No, definitely. I mean, I don't guess that, but we've all just got to work on how to get this information out and how to do it better. Okay. So that's all for today, guys. I'm probably gonna rest up a lot, maybe do a little bit of working out and trying to I don't know, just trying to heal up, listening to Dave Case's CD and stuff like that. I hope you guys are doing well out there. I just wanted to tell y'all about these things. The DSM thing is so crucial, because it just seems like this all fits into that. And for the layman who doesn't know about targeting, they're like, oh yeah, the DSM talks about that, and y'all are mentally ill. But things didn't really work that way. That's not how things happen. And that's the kind of world we live in, where really the information on how things happened, it's right at our fingertips, but the mainstream media is just not screaming it out. And we've been socially engineered to accept the way things are falsely. I mean, we've been socially engineered to look at society and believe a mainstream lie. I think a lot of us as targeted individuals, obviously, we don't see it that way anymore, but some normal people still do, and they're in danger. And we've got to wake as many people up as we can. All right, guys, I think that's it for today. I might do some live streams this weekend. It just kind of depends on how I'm feeling. But yeah, okay. All right, guys, I love y'all, and much more. And I will, I'll see you on the next one.